has accomplished, and they have made Reston proud. Let's give them a big hand. Just a couple of informational items that I have to share with you with the board. Our Board of Supervisor meeting with Supervisor Alcorn will be on May 20th. Be myself and CEO Mac. I also want to share with you that I had a meet and greet with Executive Director of Friends of Reston about a week or so ago. Very pleasant meeting. More to follow later. And Mac set up a meeting for myself and Mac and Peter to have a similar meet and greet with Lamar. As you all know, Lamar has been very instrumental in helping us with our activities related to casino. So I expressed the board's appreciation in terms of our relationship with them and very excited to work with them. And that went pretty well as well. A couple other minor things. As we move forward, if you have anything for the agenda, I believe our process is that we will include those and discuss those in the new business so that we can keep them for the next two meetings, depending on how we do that. I intend to follow up and have some informal chats with board members. I've had conversations with a couple so far. Last time I indicated that I also want to meet with SLT, and Mac and I have discussed about setting something up for the week after next, I believe, when you come back, Mac. And let me finish by saying that I'm always open to suggestions, so if you have any comments, any inputs, please feel free to let me know. Now, with that in mind, as we start, again, I will do this every single time we run the meeting. I really want you to be mindful of the time and focus on the agenda items so that we can get out at a sane hour. With that, any comments, those are my comments for today.
Next order of business.
Next order of business. We have approval of May 9th board work session meeting agenda.
Mr. President,
Director Farrell.
I propose to adopt the agenda with a couple of changes. The legal committee, we have no recommendations from them, so we can take off item 2D. I propose that we do, assuming the volunteer is available, that we take the volunteer interview before we do the CEO update. And item G, I propose to strike item G. I've read the memorandum that we received from our CEO on relative to item G, and I go back to the minutes that were circulated of our actions at the last board meeting. And Director Jeffsett moved and I seconded to direct the CEO to work with the working group, the deed amendment working group, to do both an educational effort and elicit feedback from the members regarding the Reston Association deed. I believe that's the gravamen of the memo that we got. I don't think there's anything more to be added. So in light of your desire to get us out of here at 9:30, I really don't want to spend 25 minutes being in violent agreement with the CEO, which is, I think, where the board is at right now. So I move that agenda as amended.
Is there a second for that?
I second.
Okay, discussion. Director Perry.
So I would be in favor of all of those except for striking item G. Our CEO had specifically requested to speak with us on this, and I think it's only apropos that we provide him that respect.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share a couple comments on that, if I may. I have had some conversations with the CEO regarding the time allotted for that, and as you all recall, the idea was, since our CEO was not available last time, that we wanted to carry this forward to give him an opportunity to see if he has any comments. He and I discussed the agenda item today, and Director Farrell, would you be amenable if you amend your motion for that item G to be turned into 5 minutes?
Certainly, sir.
And I think that would be reasonable, because Mac and I have discussed this, and I think 5 minutes would be plenty for that. And that would satisfy Director Perry's comment as well.
If I'm amenable to that,
Yeah.
if there's unanimous consent, Mr. President, I'm fine with that.
Okay, any other
Is it-
discussion? Yes, Director Joshi.
I have a subsidiary motion to make one additional edit.
Okay,
On item H, the motion was to make that agenda topic member communications and education.
okay.
And so adding the words "and education."
Any other discussion?
I need a second.
Mr. President,
Yeah,
we might
is there
want to
a-
determine if there's unanimous consent to make
Yes.
that amendment.
I am about to ask that, yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, is there,
Is there any objection to that amendment?
thank you, Director Farrell. Is there any objection to all those? I hear unanimous consent. So moved. Thank you. Okay,
So now, Mr. President, you need to ask for a vote on the
I
agenda.
am, yes. if-
Thank you,
I am-
sir.
I am looking at my agenda, and Director Farrell, I may be new at this, but I'm learning fast, and if you just allow me a little bit of leverage here, I will.
Try now.
Thank you, sir. I would much appreciate it. Okay.
Is there any objection to the, the agenda as amended?
Thank you. Is there any objection to the agenda as amended? Hearing none, we adopt the new agenda. Thank you. Thank you, Director Farrell.
Well, Director Graywich made the,
Of course, we're all part of one team here. Okay, we now move to, I believe, member comments. Do we have any member comments tonight?
So we do have one. I believe Margaret Perry has a member comment.
Okay. Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Margaret Perry, and my address was provided electronically in advance as allowed by Reston
Thank
Association.
you.
Thank you for your time this evening.
You have, I believe you have 3 minutes.
I want to clarify that the potential name change for the Shadowwood Recreation Area was initiated by members living near there. Staff was tasked with gathering input from all members. Therefore, all members are welcome to engage in the conversation via the online survey, the in-person meeting, and members can also email their input to the Board of Directors. This is all a piece of the conversation. All information can be found on the website at reston.org. RA wants member involvement, and this includes the potential Shadowwood Recreation Area name change. To be clear, this was not initiated by RA staff or any board member, but driven by repeated requests from members. And I support listening to the members and to the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other member comments?
There's no one else signed up. Is there anyone online that wishes to make a member comment? Sean, is there anyone in the chat? Okay.
Okay, thank you. We move on to the consent calendar.
move it. Move the adoption of the consent calendar.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
No, I have an amendment to the minutes
Okay.
that I'd like to propose. So we're in discussion because it was already seconded, so I'll let you guys know and then maybe we can fix it. Part of the motions in the minutes was to include the letter from Kathy Baum as part of the information that the board has received. And my understanding is that we typically just attach it to the end of the minutes, and it wasn't attached to the end of the minutes, and it also wasn't put in the original board packet. And so I think at this point, this is the only way we can adopt it is to attach it to the minutes. So I'd like to have it attached. So what do I motion to, I can't motion. A substitute motion. I can do a substitute motion.
What
Director
you would need to
Farrell?
what would need to happen, the proper way to do this is for you to object to the consent agenda. And then we
That's
take-
right, because it's the
Then we would
consent
take the
agenda.
minutes out as the next item on the agenda. to
Okay,
act
I
on, and that
object.
would- Okay.
No, it's the consent.
We object to
I
the
know
April
that.
23rd minutes.
Yes, just the April 20th.
April
25th.
April
25th.
25th
Thank you.
minutes, yes.
Progressive lenses.
Okay. So what do we do, Director Farrell, now?
The vote.
You vote on the consent, the remainder of the consent agenda.
Okay, let's vote on the remainder of the consent calendar. Is there all those in favor, please raise your hand. And let's see, I see all unanimous here.
Slashman.
Director Flashman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous. Okay. So how do we want to handle your
So-
objection here?
I would like to motion to amend the April 25th, 2024 meeting minutes to attach as requested the
The letter.
email regarding Kathy Baum's interest in the FOR board seat.
That is the
Second.
letter, that is the letter you're referring to.
The letter,
Okay.
yes.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Director
Aye.
Flashman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, that's unanimous, so moved.
Volunteer interviews.
Yes, so now, because we moved volunteer interviews forward, we're ready for that one. I believe we have,
Ms. Senior, can you please unmute yourself for your interview?
Yes.
There we go.
you have the floor.
Well, I'm a member of the IT committee as a volunteer, and I have been involved now for almost a year, regularly attending the meetings, providing opinions, listening and learning to various aspects of what's happening over there, and hoping that I'm making a positive impact to the team. I was requested to see if I would be interested in becoming a full-time member, and I love the proposal, and here I am.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Sina?
Does
Director-
this team want to know anything about my background, or is that okay?
I'll ask a question.
Please.
Thank you
Director
so much
Santa.
for volunteering right now and being vice chair. What's the next milestone that you'd like to see out of the committee?
So the committee has a lot of pretty tactical things that are on their plate, such as website, some of the IT infrastructure, moving that to the cloud, making sure there's security as well as user friendliness. So I think the team has done a great job moving those along, and they are pretty much on schedule. It'll be good to get some of these major initiatives completed, and then look at a long-term strategy on where we can take RA and Western next as far as IT and our innovation and support is concerned.
Any other questions? Director Perry?
Thank you. I just have one question. Your application mentions that you have 30 years of professional experience with services and marketing. And I'm just curious, with that experience, do you have ideas for how we can help move the IT department forward?
I do. My 35 years of work experience have all been in the enterprise software industry. So I have worked around all kinds of software, whether it has to do with data, and AI and security and identity verification, or even more fundamental things like production systems, managing operations and running of systems, as well as I was the CMO of smart cities initiatives at Cisco, handling that on a global basis. So there are quite a few things that come across, whether it has to do with the latest and greatest in innovative technology, fundamentally regarding the cloud and AI. The second thing would be around what we can do around smart cities. And the third thing would be my marketing experience on how can we make sure that everything that we do applies best to the facilitation of better use by Reston residents. So those are the three things that I think I can help with.
Thank you. Let me recognize that Director Dodd just joined us, so we are just doing the volunteer interviews, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to give you the floor. All right, any other questions? Okay, Ms. Sina, thank you very much for being here. We will discuss this in the executive session. We'll get back to you about the results.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to our next item on the agenda, and that is the deed amendment process. No. I'm sorry. Yes, we changed things. Thank you. The floor is yours, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. I don't have much by the way of oral comments tonight or presentation for you all. There were a number of subject matter topics that were brought up at the last meeting for information, so we provided that in your packet. I'm going to be happy to answer any questions if there are any of me. One thing that I just wanted to mention to everybody, because it has come up in the past, we posted the job recruitment for the land use planner this week. That's roughly 2 months ahead of schedule for where we had originally planned on doing that. So we're hoping to get somebody in here by the end of the second quarter as compared to starting the recruitment, at the end of the second or early third quarter. So just an update on that. Otherwise, the rest of the things related to summer openings and camps and a few other pieces of information. So that's all we have tonight.
Let me start with Vice President Garwatch first.
Regarding,
You're on.
regarding summer camps and specifically, actually, this is probably more lifeguard specific. The way I understood and read this was that we are currently staffed we are pretty much fully staffed from the start of the holiday to mid-August, but then we are struggling. We are still trying to build up staff for that remaining part, August on. Is that the case?
That is the case. That's reading it correctly. This is traditionally the issue as well. And I don't know if you want to bring Laura up for more information, but that's typically how it works with college students going back to school. And we end up putting full-time RA staff out there in the fall is what happens.
But we have reached a milestone where we feel like we are comfortable opening up 15 pools, and the hours that we wanted and anticipated going into the summer are in fact going to be staffed. That's great. Congratulations on that aspect.
Thank you. I just want to recognize 2 thumbs up from the back. From staff. Thank you. Director Farrell.
A few things in the CEO update. On the first page, I'm confused. On past sales, we refer to past sales as sold, but they're free, right?
That's just the way the system reports it, but you're correct.
So maybe we should be in a report
Issued.
Makes
Fair
more
enough.
sense, so that the membership isn't confused.
Fair enough.
That we may have backtracked on that position. On the third page, I don't need this now, but I'm curious that staff members, at the top of the third page, that as part of the organizational assessment, that there were staff members who thought the board was too much involved in day-to-day operations. I'd like to hear about what examples of that phenomenon might have been. Don't need it tonight, but would look forward to hearing from it in the future. Regarding the Shadowwood renaming, the community feedback section is this coming Monday, the 13th, not May the 7th. I had some folks who panicked, thought they had missed the meeting. Then 2 lines further down, survey results and recommendation to PRAC. PRAC's already voted on this issue. I believe the vote was 7-1, and yours truly was the only opposed member. And that goes back, I want to say, goes back about 18 months ago when PRAC was recommending that the Shadowwood renovations be undertaken. So the same night that they voted that, and Ms. Kowalski, I'm sure, can find that in the PRAC minutes, that they've already voted on the issue and voted to support changing the name. So I don't know that we really need to go back to them and ask again. And I think I got the impression from the chairman of PrAC that there was some anxiety over what was expected of PrAC. Where they've already acted, you'd effectively have to ask them to rescind their prior vote, and that could be problematical. In the last bullet talks about unveiling the name of the pool opening. That presumes that the board votes to change the name or have a different name. I'm not.
Unveil it either way.
Well, if the board votes to change the name, obviously I'm not going to vote for that. I've made that clear already, so there's no doubt here. But I'm concerned that we're telegraphing to the membership that in fact there will be a name change. So if we're saying that to the membership, why would they participate in the survey?
Director Farrell, do you want to go through them, or do you want to get a response from the CEO?
No, I'll go through them. I do have a motion.
Okay.
Regarding the Shadowwood name change. And this is something that there's been some back and forth on. Regarding the survey that we've done, I inquired, and I believe the last word I had from Ms. O'Donnell was that it is possible on the current survey that members could make multiple submissions to that survey. We don't have a mean of screening it out so that if somebody, that's right, Ms. O'Donnell is saying I have that correctly. So effectively, if I wanted to submit 20 or 25 no votes, there's nothing in the current application that we're using to prevent that from happening. And of course, that would distort what we think the community wants, and that's not in our best interest. So, and I circulated this to the board members 3 or 4 days ago. I move to direct staff that when they invite members to offer opinions by survey of issues pending before the association, that they do not use applications or platforms that will allow more than one submission per household or IP address. Need a second.
Second.
Would you like to
Debate.
Would you like to give more details on your
I think
motion?
I don't
You've
want
got
to
it
take up
covered.
more time.
Okay.
I think I covered it.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Just a question, Mac.
Mac, please.
I think I just have a question on that. So as part of our communications master plan effort, we've talked about different mechanisms to reach the membership and how we're going to take feedback and input. If I understood the motion, it's every time we are soliciting input for the community, we'll now be in a check mode, which is more of an election mode. I just want to make sure I understand.
Mr. President, that's not what the motion says.
Okay.
The motion says when we're doing a survey of issues pending. So it's like this instance. So we're going to the community, we're saying, tell us how you feel about this issue. I do not mean it to apply to the budget suggestion submission kind of, because we're not, that's a different thing. What I'm talking about when we're trying to get their preference on an issue pending before the association. That's when I think we should be using a different application than the one we're using now.
So just some considerations there. As we get into the comms master plan discussion, you may want to use social media or other kinds of platforms that are not meant to be singular binary in the way you're describing. There also could be some resourcing implications. I mean, we use some of the platforms that we use now, not contemplating that every question we ask the community has to be tracked in this way. I don't know what that is. It certainly could bring up Kara, but it is part of your discussion on like 2 items down here.
Okay. Any other discussion? Yes, Director Dunn.
Yeah, I just would like to understand, because I know that there are some survey apps that allow 1 vote per email address. And so someone can do a limited amount of gaming using 3 or 4 email addresses, but they're not going to do it dozens of times. And so I don't know whether that's the kind of system we've got right now, or if we've got a system where 1 email address can vote unlimited number of times.
Be happy to bring up Kara to walk through all this.
Yes.
Yep.
So the current system that we are using, which is Microsoft Forms, to give the option to only to permit one vote only, you needed to be able to send it to a specific email address. If you're using one generic form, as we are doing one generic URL for submissions, there unfortunately with the system that we have did not have that capability to limit to one vote only. I did research some others. I know SurveyMonkey was brought up, and that system seemed to be the same thing. If you were sending it out as an invitation, say you had a group who attended a conference or something, for example, and you wanted feedback, you could send to all the email addresses. Then you could track those IP addresses and only allow one vote per email address. In this format, to ensure anonymity of our respondents, we were required to go through the one URL for submissions, and unfortunately that does not give us the ability to track IP addresses. As I've mentioned to a few of you, we do have the opportunity to see when submissions are cast in terms of the specific time that any submission is issued. And we have been monitoring for anything like rapid succession of multiple submissions within a very, very short time frame. We have not seen that to date.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Director Flashman because he had his hand up, and then Director Santa, and followed by Director Perry. Director Flashman, you have the floor.
Yes, I don't want to address this particular issue on which the motion is on the floor, but another issue that I would like to address after this motion is voted on.
Okay. Director Santa.
I just wanted to, I'll speak against the motion. I don't disagree with the merits of what is being said. However, I do believe that the strategic plan that the staff has put together, which addresses a lot of the digital transformation, there's 2 databases that we use that don't talk to each other. So therefore, I think we should let that process go through, see what tools and CRMs they're going to use that then is compatible with the back end. Because if you want to do matching of emails, you need to get the CRM first. And I think we're all in agreement that we want clean, accurate data. And you've heard the feedback from us via email and now, so I don't think it's necessary to drill down on this. So therefore, Chair, I will vote against the motion, and I ask everyone else does too.
Okay, Director Perry, followed by you.
I have a follow-up question for Kara, please. It's actually twofold. One, you spoke about anonymity of respondents. I would like to understand more about why that might be important. And then second, you also mentioned, for example, SurveyMonkey. And I think many of us recognize that when you are hopeful of getting a certain number of responses, there is some cost involved. And I'm curious if that has been looked into at all.
It has. To address your first question, we had a specific request from some of you on this board that we really target the communities in and around the Shadowwood condos. And that some of the feedback I'd received when we've done outreach in the past prior to my time here with RA, that we got very little, if any, feedback from that surrounding areas. And just from some of my past experience in other positions, we have seen that a lot of that lends itself to a distrust of officials, so to speak, and or an apprehension about providing any kind of submissions where they feel like they could be recognized for a myriad of reasons. So we wanted to ensure that the system for submitting feedback at this juncture would be open and welcoming to all of our residents. And then to address your second question, we have started to look into some of the paid survey platforms. They range anywhere from $40 or $50 to $100 per month, charged on an annual basis for this type of access.
Thank you. Director Farrell?
A survey that allows ballot stuffing is not reliable. It's noise. making decisions based on that input is making decisions with bad information, garbage in, garbage out. We did a survey last summer of the entire community, and we were able to control that survey so that we didn't get multiple inputs from the same IP address. It can be done. The platforms are out there. $100 a month is a small price to pay to have reliable data. The survey that we're running now will not produce reliable data, and it lends itself extensively to what we call ballot stuffing. I think we need to give the staff direction to say, go find something that doesn't have that fatal flaw. And that is a fatal flaw if we're going to make decisions based on that kind of input.
Okay. Director Dott?
I have a question about whether Director Farrell intends that the current survey would be switched over to a no ballot stuffing process, or
I don't
is this
think
for
that, I don't
subsequent?
think that's practical.
Understood.
So this is a forward-looking motion.
Thank you.
The warts on this survey are the warts that we'll have. And because we've already invited people to provide answers. So I just don't want to have this problem going forward.
Okay, I'm going to do one more round, which will be our second round, to give you guys another chance. Director Perry first, and then Director Santa.
So I just want to reiterate something that I mentioned in my member comment earlier, which is all of the pieces are literally that. They are pieces. So the online survey where people are allowed to say, yes, I want a name change, or no, I don't, and here are my ideas of what that could look like, is only one piece. The meeting set for Monday, May 13th, is also one piece of that conversation. As I mentioned in my member comments, members are welcome to email the board, email staff to let us know their opinions. I appreciate Director Farrell's reasoning, but I think his continued use of wording that implies that we will provide an answer to this question only based on those results of that survey is unfair to staff and this process as a whole.
Thank you. Director Santa?
I'd just like to clarify for everybody that what Director Farrell's trying to do is just make the process more authentic, more accurate, greater transparency for all. So there is merit in that. I'm going to speak to the motion again, which is, Kara, having received this feedback, would you take this under consideration as part of your strategic plan for you to find a solution moving forward if there weren't even a motion being made?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe we've had enough discussions on this. On Director Farrell's motion, let's take a vote here. All those in favor? I see Director Farrell, Director Juszczyk, and Director Flashman as yay, and who's those against? One, Director Perry, Director Dodd, Director Santa, Director Grywacz. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 to 4 motion carries, defeated.
Motion. Mr. President?
Yes, Dr. Farrell.
A couple more things on the, we had at the last meeting talked about continuing action on the on-call civil engineering to this evening. The feedback we're getting is that the staff won't be ready tonight for that. And so I'm going to ask, can we anticipate having something on June 13th, or would you like to have it on a later agenda item?
Thank you for not making it the end of May. June 13th is feasible. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I can move to have that matter on our June 13th agenda, unless there's an objection.
Is there any objection to that motion? Okay, that seems to be unanimous here. I know.
Somebody else have something to say?
Just allow me 1 second. Director Flashman, you said you wanted to make some comments on something else.
Yes.
Go ahead,
May I proceed? Okay.
please.
Yesterday, I circulated a memo with regard to some aspects of the survey of the Shadowwood renaming process. And since then, there have been a number of conversations with regard to that. And I think that the matter has been successfully resolved with the intervention of of the president and of Izzy Santa as well. And of course, with CEO Mac Cummins. And so the result is that I will be given 450 door hangers, and I will go knocking on doors at Shadowwood for the purpose of alerting them to the fact that there is a survey and that they should participate in it. How they participate in it, but voicing their opinion one way or another is up to them, and I will not attempt to move that in one direction or another.
Okay,
And
Director
so I'm
Fleshman,
very thankful to the people who have participated in helping to resolve that issue.
Okay, Director Fleshman, thank you very much. Just to add a couple more words on that. Yesterday and today, by working with our CEO, Mac, and Secretary Santa and Director Fleshman, we all came to I would say, a compromise, a solution that is amenable to all. And that's what exactly Director Fleshman described. And Mac, we've talked about this and everything is good to go, correct?
I'm not sure I have anything to add on that.
Sorry?
I don't have anything to add on that.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I have one last observation, and that is that 450 is a large number. And so if there is anyone who would like to participate in assisting me in doing the door knocking and who is bilingual, I would be very appreciative of their assistance. Just get in touch with me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could make myself available, but I'm not bilingual. Is that any help to you at all?
I don't know the full extent of the necessity of bilingual, but my suspicion is that there are a large number of Spanish-speaking people, and the extent to which they speak English adequately or understand it, I do not know.
Mr. President, I've already let Director Fleshman know I'm available to help him with that.
Thank you very much. Director Perry. Director Perry had her hand up. I'll come back to you.
I actually had a question regarding the CEO update information, if that's okay. And Laura.
Director Perry, just give me 1 second. I just want to, Director Farrell.
I had several more things on the CEO update, but I'm happy.
Let me finish with
I'm happy
Director
to
Perry.
yield
Yes, thank you.
to Director
Thank
Perry,
you.
and if I can come back.
Yes, of course.
I think mine will be quick. Peter, Laura, either of you. I have been getting a number of questions from the membership. Now that Shadowwood Pool has heating, what will that look like? Will the pool be heated all season or just as necessary, or in the future on the side seasons like Ridge Heights? What does that look like for Shadowwood?
So while we wait for Laura to walk up here, just a couple thoughts from me. Thank you. So we're very excited to have the heat on Shadowwood Pool. We will have it on when the pool opens in June. We have done some thinking mostly about the site. The site hasn't been open for a while. What's the parking going to look like along with the tennis courts? We've also done some thinking from an evaluation perspective. If it looks like the pool is really being utilized, we will do some evaluation for maybe keeping it open later. Another important piece is that the spray feature will be open even if the pool is closed. So there is an opportunity for play at the site even if the pool is not open. But I'll let our experts speak a little further to that.
So typically our other two heated, is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
So as with our other two heated facilities, Ridge Heights and North Shore pools, we typically heat those when the water is below 80 degrees. And so that's usually between May and mid-June. And then we would turn them back on again in September, should that temperature fall below. And we're continuing that practice at Shadowwood.
May I ask a follow-up? I appreciate that, and I would encourage staff to consider that the 80 benchmark be set, especially for that pool, just period, not from this date to this date, would be my encouragement of staff. And then believe, Peter, you answered my second question, which was, is there a reason it's only open in season 3, given that it's heated? And it sounds like there may be a possibility of extending that.
So just to shout out Director Flashman, he had asked us this question previously, so we're providing the same response again. But we've committed to doing some evaluation. The typical season is what the typical Shadowwood season historically would have been, so that's why it's advertised in that way. But if it's trending that maybe being open later is a good thing, we're going to do that evaluation as we go.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director.
When the water's heated, to what temperature is it? Is 80?
80.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Perry, done?
Yes, Director Perry.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Farrell,
Thank you.
over to you.
Just a few more. On the bottom of, page numbers would help. I guess we're at the bottom of 2, going over to 3. We're talking about the Fannie Mae site. When I had a conversation at the public hearings on this application, the advocate for this property and this proposal claimed that we had not followed up with them. I don't believe that to be the case because our staff is pretty diligent. But in order to forestall that from happening again, as it well might, I would encourage the staff to do a follow-up so that the ball's always in their court and so that the applicant can never go to our supervisor and say, well, I never heard from them again. I think that's important with who we're dealing with in this circumstance. And so I would hope there wouldn't be any objection to that on the part of our staff.
So we're already doing that. And one of the things our new land use planner will be doing is tracking all of the projects, particularly those with proffers, to be in the forward-leaning posture that you're describing.
Thank you.
Not just this one.
Okay.
Right. Then you have the strategic plan items. And some of these are just typos, so I'll go through them quickly. On line 1.2.3, I think you meant to say other HOA communities.
There are a number of typos in here. This was a very draft document. So,
Sure.
but yes.
And 1.3.1 is to consistently communicate with RA members. We have a resolution right now that says that the provision of an email address is voluntary. And it seems to me that part of an increased communications master plan should be to council revise that resolution so that we're able to require people to give us an email address so that we only have 8,000 out of 24,000 homes. But if they're going to, in this day and age, I don't think you can do business with almost anybody without providing them an email address. And if we had the email addresses, we could more effectively send out communication. We could even set up where I've mentioned to some people, we could even set up an email address for a homeowner that only relates to RA. So I don't have to worry about getting spam from us. But I'd like to see that conversation there. In 2.1.1, it would be both the president and the CEO that enhances the relationship with the Hunter Mill supervisor. Yeah? In 3.3.1, I'm a little confused as to why utilize member service working group to create a streamlined process for doing business with RA is under natural resources.
It's a copy issue. I saw it this morning. It's a copy issue.
On 3.4.1 is a reference to software Sage. I'm not familiar with that software. Can you tell me what that is?
Sure. So one of our initiatives right now is to use all of our software applications to their greatest point. I think we can do a better job of using our applications in a better way. Sage is our purchasing and procurement software.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
purchasing?
Purchasing and procurement, yes.
Great. Going over to 4.3.5, phasing out the use of cash at all RA facilities. I think that's going to have a deleterious impact on those members who cannot get a credit card or a debit card. So I would be skeptical of that. Providing people with more opportunities to use their credit card makes sense, but to say we're not going to let people pay their bills or without cash, I think presents some DEI issues for me. And a couple more. communicate with membership regarding news and related, and this is 5.3.1. I'm not sure how find new ways to communicate with the membership regarding events and news related to the association fits under capital projects.
It's a similar item to just trying to get more information out to the members, but we can reword it.
I don't, in 6.2.2, institute the fishbowl concept at all staff meetings. What does that mean?
Our staff are interested in hearing and having more notes taken. So that was their feedback from XLT. We have this new group called the Extended Leadership Team, and they expressed some interest in just having a little more feedback from meetings that happen throughout the organization.
And the last one, there's a typo in 6.3.4, establish a system to track employees.
Sure.
All I have, Mr. President. Thank you for
Thank you
your
very
patience.
much. Thank you. Any,
So I might just mention on the strategic plan, we're planning actually on bringing this item to you in June. So we know it's not that pretty and there's a lot of those kinds of things coming up. So look for something that looks a little bit more like the community survey implementation plan that you're seeing in your quarterly update. And so we'll make sure that's, we're committed once a quarter to you all, and hopefully that rhythm works. But as we get into this, if there are more things you want to know about, tactical strategies that fit within the objectives, that sort of thing, just let me know.
okay, thank you very much. Director Flashman,
Yes.
last round.
On the issue of eliminating cash payments, beyond the DEI issue, the currency of the United States is legally usable for the payment of all debts and obligations. And so I'm not sure that we are in a position to say, no, you can't pay cash.
Okay.
Just for clarity's sake, there are a number of events all across the nation that are cashless. The Washington Nationals are one of them. You know, like 35,000 people managed to still get concessions without the use of cash. I'm sure our membership could, but again, it's not to say one way or the other. It's just, it's becoming more
It's a trend.
of the norm.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I think we've had enough. Director Juszek.
Also, just to follow up on that, and I'm sure our finance department would support, there's also a number of risks, compliance risks with taking cash, especially cash at the places that we take cash, where we have less experienced staff members in that. So there's some risk involved there. So I'll start with the strategic plan because that's kind of where we just ended. And I understand you're coming back in June, so I'll kind of reserve some of my comments till then. But when you come back in June, I would love to see something regarding the deliverable timeframes for each of these, because I felt like that was a missing component in general across it. But I can email you separately and then come back in June and discuss further. So on the pools, as part of that report, I really appreciate the thoughts that went into adding some things to the pool schedule, especially the member feedback that we reserved related to fitness hours. And I'm glad that we're able to extend it, even though I know that it's a challenge to find people to fill those slots. I would love to see us be able to extend the pool season, and so I'll be asking when we get to budget season for that to be one of the initiatives, is what the cost would be to extend the pool season. I really think in general, the members perceive that our pools, and all of them, should be open from Memorial Day to Labor Day. You know, there was a board, I want to say it was the 2016 board, maybe it was 2017 board, but if you compare the pool schedule from pre that decision to now, I think that the 2015, 2016 schedule is something that our members would much more value, because it makes a huge difference per session with the number of pools that are open and the hours that they're open. If there's any way that we have the ability, and I know it's late, to consider for holidays, like Memorial Day itself, we only have a small number of pools open. I would love to see, let's see, so we have 4 pools open on Memorial Day. And unless I'm wrong, I feel like all the members have told me that they go to pools on Memorial Day, that they're pretty busy. If there's any possibility to open a couple more pools, even if it's just for the day, or, Memorial Day or Labor Day, that would be very much appreciated. Also, the Fairfax County schools close, and I don't know why, but this year they decided to end school season on a Wednesday instead of a Friday, which means we have a ton of parents out there that have no camp opportunities or places to take their kids. That Thursday and Friday, the 13th and 14th, if there's any availability to open more pools just for those 2 days, I think that people would appreciate it. And then we also don't have any kids under the age of 16 that can swim past 7 o'clock in season 2. So if there's some availability to open a pool or 2 past 7 o'clock in season 2, that's not just for fitness, that would be very much appreciated. And I was curious, from the report, it says that we have given out almost 8,000 passes to our members so far, which is double the almost 4,000 that we had at the same time. So awesome that we have been able to double it in the same time. But I'm curious what the board's sense is. We have 22,000 households, we have 60,000 people. What was your feeling as to a good accomplishable number? Like, what number are we trying to get to for people in the community to take advantage of the free passes? Because I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be 20,000 by the time we finish the pool season. That was my hope. And so when I see 8,000, I see it as huge that we made a difference. And it's certainly still pre-pool season, so hopefully we get some traction. But I was really hoping to see tens of thousands of pool passes. If anyone has feedback, it looks like Margaret does.
So in the spirit of my initial comment about keeping things in focus, we're still stuck on the CEO update. So I encourage you to be brief. And Director Jeszczak, please get back on the comments towards the CEO update, because I don't want to have another side discussion about what did we think and what did the numbers look like and so on. We can put that on the agenda for the next time to discuss. And if you'd like to make a motion for new business, we can do that.
Sure, I'm happy to make a motion. I had a conversation with Mac, and that's why I didn't ask him, because I had a personal conversation. So Mac and I are on the same page of where that is.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just want to keep us on track because
I am, but I also think that the comments that I make are important. And
I didn't say they're not important. They are important, but I just want us to stay on.
I'm trying to be brief.
Good, thank you. Yes. Director Perry, did you have something?
I just had a quick response, if I'm allowed. Jennifer, I think we're on a good pace. Mm-hmm. I think that we have certainly a lot of ability to continue to improve. I will tell you, as someone who is a renter, for renters, it's a little bit harder. I can't just go in and grab my pool pass. I have to prove that I live where I live. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just a hurdle. It's not an immovable object. But so, for example, my family do not have their pool passes at this time, because when I went and tried to get them, I was not allowed to by the system. And so therefore I have not gone back and readdressed that. And so I anticipate you may be seeing some of that, just FYI.
Thank you.
And that's great feedback, and that's the kind of conversation that I actually envisioned us having during these working sessions, because it helps inform us and inform staff to what those barriers might be, so that we can all work together to kind of move things forward and reach the goals that we were hoping. I was wondering if somebody could volunteer to go to the Lake Thoreau Grand reopening from the board, because I noticed that it's on May 24th, and I'm going to be out of town, and it's a South Lakes pool. So if someone could volunteer to do that, I would really appreciate it, because I think that at least one of us should be at each of these grand openings.
Director Juszczyk,
The shadow.
if I may comment on that, I was going to volunteer immediately, but then I realized that I'm going to be out of town myself as well.
Mr.
That's
President, I plan on being there.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Director
I
Farrell.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Be
then,
there as well.
Yes,
Yay,
that's
thank
great.
you,
The more the
thank you, thank
merrier.
you.
Yes, thank you, Director Dunn.
I'll definitely be at the June 15th one, and then obviously anyone else is welcome to join, but I wanted to make sure we had a board member at each.
Can I just jump in super quick? We are actually hoping for some photo op opportunities for the board as we've gone through these construction cycles to be able to get you all out there,
Sounds good.
especially right before opening when things look
Yeah.
perfect and brand new. So we're going to be reaching out on those
Yeah,
things as well.
great. Thank you.
Great.
Great.
I think that, yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Director Juszczyk, did you want to include a topic about the numbers that you mentioned for future discussion as well?
I would defer to staff. Would that be helpful to have that type of feedback from the board or that type of discussion?
Yeah, how about we just, between Joel and I, work on when and how to put that on a future agenda. I think it's important to talk about how do we measure success, especially as we start new initiatives.
Yep. Let's see, Director Flashman, you have your hands up?
Yes, I have to leave
Yep.
the board meeting this
Thank
evening,
you.
and so I appreciate the attention you have given me, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you very much.
you.
See you later.
Good night.
Thank you. Okay, I believe we are done with that agenda item. If there are no other comments, discussion. Okay, going to move on to the deed amendment process discussion. And it has, council, it has your name attached to it, but I believe, just as background, the last time we had this conversation, our CEO wasn't here, and the plan was, because he's not here, why don't we just keep this on the agenda so that if there are any comments, anything that he could share with us. But floor is yours. Do you have any additional updates, anything on that?
7:29 on May 9th, and council has nothing to say.
Thank you.
For the record, that's one in a row. I will certainly be brief tonight. So I reviewed the tape and tried to get a sense of, what was being said, at the meeting. I tried to put together some written comments that would have been similar to what I probably would have put in last month's packet. As we are looking at sort of parallel but equal efforts, one around a deed education process, it is absolutely has been my experience that most of our membership does not understand what a deed is, what's in it, how it affects their lives and so forth. So I think that was a really good idea to bring forward. The other process, of course, is should we move forward with the deed update or not? That's been, of course, sent to the deed subcommittee to weigh in on, and there's a number of factors there that group will kick around and send back a recommendation. Kara and I have had some preliminary conversations about what the education process might look like. Happy to bring her up and just offer some preliminary thoughts that will, of course, go to the deed subcommittee, as well as back to the board, and then we can wrap this one up.
Okay, yes, Director Farrell.
Just a question for council. You weren't getting away that easy. As I understand it, the original deed was recorded in 66?
I believe that's correct.
And then 86, and then 2006. And my question is, do we have copies of all three of those iterations of the deed?
I'm looking for them.
Okay, because they will be among the land records of the county. They have to be in order to be effective.
Correct.
So when that happens, when you do acquire them, I think the deeds working group would probably appreciate getting copies of all three of those iterations.
Okay.
We'll definitely provide it in a folder in the Dropbox.
Okay. Kara, hang on, Director Juszczyk.
Mr. President, can you clarify who's on the deed subcommittee? Because the last time we looked, we had 5, and we can't have a meeting if we have 5.
Yes. I can't look it up right on the spot. If you allow me, I will look it up and get the confirmation and share back with you
Perfect.
at a
Thank
later
you.
time. Sure.
Hi, so as Mac indicated, we are starting to kick around some ideas for an educational campaign for our members. As he mentioned, a lot of our members just don't think about the deed on a regular basis. It's not part of their everyday lives, and they really perhaps just may not consider all of the ways it helps make Reston Reston. So we thought about a series of short videos, make them very layman's terms, very engaging, maybe a little bit fun, just to help educate folks on what the deed is. Sorry, Tony, it would have very little legal language in it because, with apologies to all of my lawyer friends, that's not exactly fun to the I'm getting a stare from Tony right now. But to really kind of just bring that kind of fun element into learning what the deed is and why you should care as a member of the Reston community. Also then highlighting some of the big factors that are unique to Reston, things like the DRB, and showcasing, I'm kind of foreshadowing a little bit what I'll be talking about next in some of the member communications, but foreshadowing a little of just what RA provides to the members on a daily basis that I think a lot of our membership just doesn't think about. So having that as well as a real comprehensive FAQ on our website are some of the early things that we're thinking about, pushing those videos out, not just on our social media channels, but on some of the Reston Herndon community channels to reach those who do not necessarily follow us. So those are just some of the ideas we've started kicking around. And of course, I welcome any of your input on some of those.
Any comments? Any feedback? Yes, Director Santa.
I think this is great, and I welcome it. My one question is, I think it's going to be hard for the recipient of this to understand it if they're not knowing what they're going to react to, which would be the red lines that the deed committee might be thinking about. So is there a possibility to think as we move forward in the work back timeline that if we want these videos to be launched by X date, that therefore we have a glimpse of at least the topic areas that the deed committee would like to go out publicly to be like, look at these sections, because it's unreasonable to expect the membership to understand what the concept of a deed is and then say, gee, I have an opinion. I think you're going to find that difficult to garner that reaction. And if you don't think about that, then I think your KPIs for this effort will fail.
That's a really good point. Thank you.
Council?
I may be misunderstanding, but I don't think the board has decided one way or another if they're going to undertake a deed amendment.
Right.
So I'm not sure how we can do a red line. I'm just trying to get clarification on what this board is looking for from the subcommittee in terms of a work product.
So let me jump in on this, because I think we imagined, and I certainly heard the last meeting, the board having a desire to make sure we're trying to educate our community on the deed, regardless if we move forward.
Correct.
So I imagine some of this education outreach may be feeding into the go, no-go decision that the deed subcommittee will be talking about. But in any event, Kara and I are starting to think about and ramp up for an educational campaign one way or the other.
Yeah. I believe that's the board consensus. Right. And I say that not just for me to say that, but going back to the previous, from last year and so on, I think that's been the board consensus. So I think we're all on board. Okay. Any other comments? Thank you, Kara. Yep. Thank you. All right. We are ready for item I. Benefits-based fee permit concept?
No, member communication, Mr. President?
I'm sorry.
H.
I got to use my glasses more, right? Director Farrell? No, I've got him here. I don't look good on camera when I do that.
Oh.
Yes, I am. I checked the wrong one, I think. Yes, thank you.
So I'm just going to make a couple of super brief introductory comments, hand it over to Kara to walk through the lion's share of this. So one of the things I want to start working with you all on is tying back the initiatives that you're talking about and the policy issues that you're discussing to the strategic plan, and continuing to talk about the guiding North Star and why you're spending time on the things that you're spending time on. One of the single biggest things that's come up since I've been here has been, how do we communicate with members? Are we successful? Are we not successful? Certain mediums, different kinds of things. So to that end, you'll recall that as part of the strategic plan, a significant component of that related to different facets of a communication strategy. So we got the directive to come back and talk to you all about member communications. I think we certainly understood that to be more of the communications master plan. So what we thought would be very productive is to have Kara give you her preliminary thoughts. And again, this is due to be done by the end of August. So we imagined probably 2 checkpoints, but no more than 3. We thought we might do this in June, so today's a little bit preliminary. We'll get some feedback from you all. It may be June, it may be July, but with to continue to move forward based on the feedback. So I want to have Kara walk you through some of her thoughts on the buckets of the things that are going to fit within the strategic plan, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi again. Now, some of the goals, as Mac just mentioned, is that we really wanted to increase our communication efforts by meeting the members where they are. For a long time in the past, RA has focused on having members come to board meetings or come to events here at the conference center or coming to our channels and to find information. And we want to take that a step further. Obviously, that would still be the goal, is to discover that they want to get receive our communications, be a part of our social media channels. But we want to go to them. And that will be, you'll see, will be done in a variety of different ways. Everything from participating in outside community groups, collaborating with some of our community partners, and also getting that extra level of community engagement at an earlier part in the process. We want to really educate the members. I talked about this a moment ago, of the various programs, projects, and responsibilities of RA. I see often people associate RA solely with the pools. And as we all know, that's just one part of who we are as an association and just one amenity of many that we provide to our members. And then, as I mentioned, the third would be engaging our members at an earlier time, getting them involved in the process and feeling like they've played a role in their own community that they are supporting financially, but idealistically. All of those avenues, really just making them a part of the organization. So Sean, if you could change the slide for me. We're looking at, oh boy, now I need my glasses. We can make that a little bit bigger. We're looking at a series of 5 buckets of objectives. I can see a little bit more than that, Sean, if we can see them all in one page, if possible. No, the other way. The first, of creating new ways to communicate with and inform our membership. Bringing everything back to the strategic plan. For me, this goes under that member experience. And a big part of that is going to be our new website. We hope to have a sneak preview of what some of this stuff is going to look like by early in the summer. So, but we are working with Civic Plus, our vendor, and we've been very pleased so far with the look, the feel, and how information is going to be stored on our site. Just to give you a little bit of a preview, members will be able to easily access information. We all know our site is a little bit difficult to navigate in the current structure. So we're going with a 2-click ideological, that anything will be able to be accessed with no more than 2 clicks. We're going to have an option for members to immediately submit and then track any kind of ticket requests. So if a tree is down and they need to let RA know, They just need to fill out a form, and then they can track the progress of that request. We will also have, we've been talking emails a lot here, but the website will have the ability to send out text alerts for those who wish to sign up to receive them. And we will also have alert banners on the website. So if something, an unexpected pool closure or something like that, we'll be able to have that in a banner on the top and send out immediate text alerts to those who choose to receive them. We'll also have a full newsroom page where we will encourage sign-ups of all of our different newsletters, to sign up to receive information from the board, sign up to receive news releases, all of these different ways to help our members get the information they need from RA and also a more complete set of information. Additionally, we're working with our member services department to develop a centralized FAQ. We have a member services working group right now, which is diligently working to find those hot button issues that members are coming in with and developing those centralized FAQs to address them right at the start. So we're working directly with the member services team to, let communications know, hey, suddenly I'm getting a whole bunch of calls about X issue. We can research that and really work to get that information out in front quickly. The second bucket would be collaboration with and advocacy for our membership and community at large, and that falls under the strategic plan partnerships and advocacy bucket. That, of course, a lot of that advocacy started on my first day here with RA with the news of the casino, and has expanded since then. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to be more regularly engaging, A, with our community groups, B, with our elected officials at the regional and state level to ensure that Reston has its place at the table at all times. We've done a lot of great work, whether it was updating that Reston master plan and keeping on top of issues. And I just want to help us keep that line of communication going. The third would be creating strategies to promote Reston in the media. We've already started doing some of that. You may have seen some of the news coverage this week of just our Movies in the Park series. These are relatively routine events for RA, but giving that little extra bit of editorial push keeps our name in the news media and shows a positive light of what we've been doing for a community. We've also joined some groups to identify and react to national or regional pitches in the requests in the media where it might be appropriate for us to do so. And then that brings me, I touched on this when we were talking a little bit about the deed update, but a proactive RA Works campaign highlighting the many different ways RA is working for the community. Whether it's an arborist up on a tree, a lifeguard, a grounds crew operator, a covenants advisor, all of you here on the board, there are a whole lot of ways that we are working for the Reston community at large and our membership, and we need to let them know about it. Because, as I said, there's often a perception out there that RA handles pools, and we do so much more than that. The fourth is developing a community engagement strategy. I touched on this earlier. This actually would fall under the strategic capital improvement in way of getting our members involved in the process. It could be something as simple as Chris and I have talked about as some of the tot lots are being considered for renovations or improvements. Let's ask the members, what are the things they want to see in a tot lot? Give the budget requirements and just get that feedback. Get our members involved in the process. And there, I see some of the things there that we can do to address that, and also implementing a Get Involved campaign. Encourage people to sign up for our committees, encouraging them to get involved with working groups. Again, encouraging that participation in and then ownership of the process. And then finally, in improving our internal communications, which falls under the dynamic workforce of our strategic plan. We've already started a monthly employee newsletter. Some of the things we heard, as Max said, from the org assessment and that we've heard from staff is, they don't always know what the rest of the team is doing here or what happens at a board meeting. And we want to make sure our staff is well-informed and well-connected to each other. We will be promoting those types of things and at our staff meetings and events, and then also increasing max visibility to the staff on a regular basis so they have an opportunity to really interact one-on-one on a daily basis. So that's kind of where we're looking, Jalal. I promised I'd keep it short. So I'm open to any questions you may have or suggestions.
Thank you very much for the briefing. Any questions, any comments, Director Farrell?
This PowerPoint that was just read to us was not in the board package.
It was not complete. We had it as a Word document, I believe.
Well, I have a Word document, but it's not like that. Can we get that out?
Absolutely.
In the board package and up to the membership?
Can I just offer, John, this was, super preliminary, and so can we clean this up a little bit? I mean, I think the intent tonight maybe was just to take some general feedback and.
I'm just thinking the point of, Mr. President.
Sure, go ahead, Director Farrell.
As part of two things. One, transparency to the membership. Generally speaking, members expect whatever we discuss here to be in the board package on the Friday before the meeting, but it also about our president's fascination with trying to get things done on time, and I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Director Farrell.
Always trying to help, sir.
Thank you.
With regard to the bullet point under the collaboration, I'm looking at the written.
They're essentially the same, yes.
There's a discussion about listening sessions, and I wish Director Flashman was here because he could corroborate my observation, is the listening sessions by and large were a waste of time. I remember there were multiple years where he and I went to every listening session, and he and I were the only members who showed up to those listening sessions. And I didn't hold them last year for that reason, because it's a hell of a demand on staff. The staff outnumbered the members by 4 or 5 to 1. We have opportunity for member comment, not only at the board, but at every single one of our committees. So every single one of our committees gives membership an opportunity to comment. I don't think the members suffer from a lack of an opportunity to give us feedback. And I'm concerned about putting an excessive strain on staff to ask them to come out to, I think it was 6 that were proposed a couple of years ago, or proposed to me. And I said, come on, that's not fair to the staff. So I'm skeptical of listening sessions being productive. The second bullet there, we talk about the Lake Ann Farmers Market. Lake Ann is only one part of the county. There is a farmers market at St. John Newman Church. It's not run by the church. It's run by an independent organization. Every Wednesday from 3 to 7. They would be more than happy to have us have a table there, and it would make our facilities available to people who live south of the toll road. On the last bullet point, we talk about promoting values and priorities to elected officials at the regional and state level. Obviously, we want to be promoting our values to elected officials at the local and the county level. And the last thing comes back to something I mentioned earlier during the CEO update. I believe there's a resolution, Council, wherein we say that emails are provided to us voluntarily. And I'd like us to, when this comes back to us, revisit that issue, because I think we have the ability to say, if you're going to be a member, we need an email. We only have $8,000 now. We need 24,000 if we're going to implement this kind of a communication policy. I remember, because I think I was in the room when the board said, no, it would be voluntary to provide us with emails. And I think we're at a stage in the evolution of emails, and this goes back to when email was new, so it may be 20 years old, Mr. President, that policy. But I think we're long past that point. And if someone doesn't want to give us their daily email or their personal email, we can always help them set up an email that's just specific to RA. But we really do need, that's how communication happens today. We need to have an ability to contact all 24,000 households, and email appears to be the way to do it. And I would like us to go back and revisit that policy or that resolution, whichever said that it would only be voluntary.
Thank you, Director Fauchman. And just, Director Farrell, just based on my experience, when it comes to emails and privacy issues, you get into a lot of issues, and it's opening Pandora's box. And I think council was planning to respond to, Tony, were you going to say something there?
I was just going to say, I'm not sure it's a resolution rather than a policy, but I'll look.
Okay.
And Ken, will you have something when this comes back for us then?
I can have something.
Hang on, I had Director Perry raise her hand for a comment here.
Something as in I'm sorry, I just need clarification. Something as in an opinion, as pros and cons?
Mr. President, A, what do we have on the books now that says it can be voluntary? And B, can we mandate it? Those are my two questions. I believe we can, Mr. President.
Council, can we look into that?
Certainly.
Thank you. Director Perry?
So I just want to thank you all for this rough draft that was presented to us preliminarily prior to when we asked you for it originally. I know that is very difficult on all staff to provide things ahead of when you all expected to deliver them. So thank you very much for all that you have done here. I really appreciate that under collaboration, the first bullet point says find ways to increase visibility through listening sessions or other alternate platforms. I think that absolutely is doable. I would love to be able to have a time when I'm out for coffee or something where we publicize that members can come speak to me. It doesn't have to be a formal listening session. So I think the fact that you've put in or other alternate platforms is a great first step in the draft. The second piece, I love the fact that we are getting out to the members, and it includes but not limited to those things personally listed there, though I do agree that Director Farrell's suggestion of reaching out to the farmers market on the south side would be an excellent opportunity. As far as emails, and I will make this very brief. I have worked with a number of organizations where emails are necessary to some extent. And I will tell you that there are members of this community that do not have emails for various reasons. They do not provide their emails for various reasons, and they will not. So while I appreciate that it would be great for us to advocate getting additional emails, to sit there and tell someone that they cannot be a member unless they provide their email is, I think, shooting us in the foot for requesting new members to join RA. Thank you.
Director Dodd had her hands up and then
Yeah.
followed by Director Santa.
I just wanted to, again, thank you all for presenting this plan, and I also wanted to commend, I don't know whether to give credit to Mac or Kara or Shared, but and Peter, but the fact that we have had a presence at the farmers market in Lake Ann, and I hope we'll soon in the south side, and the fact that we got so many community surveys done by having staff there at pools, asking people to complete them. I think we have done a much better job of outreach. I'm proud of the progress that has been made. Of course, we can always do more, but I think the outreach of reaching people where they are, despite the, maybe our listening sessions had reasons they weren't well attended. The ways that we've gone out to pools and to community events to have a presence there has made a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Santa.
And just if I could comment on that, I have to say I can take no credit for the farmers market or the community survey. That goes to my colleague Laura Kowalski, as all of that took place prior to my starting here at RA.
Okay, Director Santa.
I just, in the spirit of this being a working session, this will be quick. John does have a merit to emails, and while the website is being redone, and that's going to take some time, and there's obviously a gap, a suggestion, just in the spirit of brainstorming, is there an ability on the homepage to put a blacked out box that says opt-in? Because I believe SOPA and whatever, or the Spam Act, what they say is you have to opt in. So can we just create that for now and have a drive, like an effort that says, please opt in so you can receive X, Y, and Z, and while we figure out Tony's advice per John's request? I think that would be a good mitigation step for now.
That's a great idea. I'll talk with our web team on how to implement that.
Thank you. Any other comments, Dr. Juszczyk?
I'd kind of like to get back to the reason why I asked for this to be on the agenda, which was absolutely not to ask staff to put anything together related to coming up with a master plan. It was really to have a dialogue between ourselves and staff of what our goals related to a communications master plan would be, and what type of things would we all be interested in reviewing or looking at as we make those goals. Nonetheless, I also appreciate you putting some preliminary thoughts together. What I was hoping that we would do is talk about, where do we want to go with the communication and education to members? So some of the things I thought from my own perspective were, do we want the ability in the future for members to be able to talk to each other? Is that a yes or a no? Because if it's a no, then I don't want staff to go down a rabbit hole of trying to create mechanisms by which that can happen. From my perspective, I think that that's one of the things that I hear back from members on a regular basis, is that unless they are people that are either already in their networks or they see them on the trails walking around, or they're adjacent neighbors, they want to be able to outreach to communities across Dresden and to engage with other people. And they don't have the ability to do that. And right now we tell them that we won't give them their contact information. So I think that at some type of online community, like a listserv type of format, and I believe our news system has a module that would allow for those types of things. I think that us giving them the ability to engage with each other, and then they can, via a mechanism like that, truly exchange contact information if they so want to, would go a long way to connecting people that play tennis or people that play pickleball, or, moms that, want a play group at one of our local pools in the summer. So I would love to see us explore ways for members to connect with
Director
each other.
Juszczyk, may I ask a clarification on that?
Yes.
You're talking about communities in Reston, correct? Like the tennis community or communities of interest?
I mean, anyone in Reston, and maybe what we set up is there's a general forum and there's a pickleball forum and there's a tennis.
You're not talking about Reston communicating with people in Ashburn or other places, anything like that?
No, within the membership.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, within the membership.
Yep, thanks.
I also would love to see some information for us to be able to evaluate, like, what are our current touch points right now? What are the metrics on those current touch points? How many people are we hitting on social media? How many people are enrolled in RA News? How many people respond to surveys? Those types of things would give us the metrics to be able to decide where should our metrics be going, or do we even care about the metrics that we're currently using right now? And those have been, like, I feel like I have a couple in my head, but it's maybe because I've asked you a question, but I don't know that the community understands it or that the board understands that. I would love to see us really have a conversation about our preferences on opt-in and versus opt-out. And in order to have those conversations, we need the legal background to the acts that Director Santa was talking about. We need to be educated on what our limitations are and what we can require. Because we've had several conversations over several years about privacy and what that means. And I don't know that we have the information to be able to make those calls and to give staff some true direction on a potential policy change. So anything our legal counsel can do to bring us that type of education, I would be thankful of. And there was one more that I had. We have talked about education in the sense of education to members, but we never have really talked about what topics we're trying to educate them on. And usually what we call education is what are the things that RA do for members. But I feel like there's a much broader set of education that we could have metrics for. For instance, we had the Drainage 101 session here the other night, right? And the Environmental Advisory Committee has been suggesting for years that we educate on all kind of topics. Is that the type of education we're looking to do to members? And is that what we see our role as, or do we see our role strictly as educating on things that RA provides? And I think until we get to the bottom of that as a board and kind of have an overarching principle, we almost send our committees down rabbit holes that go nowhere. And that's not to the advantage or benefit to the board, to the members, or giving staff some direction on what we'd like to see. So those are the types of things I thought that we should have a discussion about before we really get into creating a master plan. Thank you.
Good points.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah. Yes, Director Perry.
Director Juszczyk and I have had conversations in the past about education, and I think it's something that we both are passionate about. But I want to just point on, because she was there, but I don't feel like quite hit the nail on the head, which is I feel that our education not only needs to be for members, but it needs to be for our committees, and it needs to be for this board.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Yeah. Director Santa.
As part of this conversation, which I think is a good one, is there a way that staff can just look at similarly sized HOAs to see what their comms is? So we're punching above our weight, but also maybe going above and beyond, since we are pretty awesome?
I've started to do some research of some similarly sized HOAs around the country and taking a look. And I mean, I will say we do a lot compared to some of the others already. And, you know, my goal is to take that even further.
I would like to add one more on top of what Director Santa said, because I was about to say a similar thing. Just following up on Director Juszczyk about metrics and so on, it would be really good when you look at other planned communities like Reston to at least bring back some information in terms of how we fare against those communities. That would be a good metric as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Dodd.
Just very briefly, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but Director Juszczyk raised the question of whether or not it is our role to assist members in communicating with one another in areas of interest. And I don't really see that as a Reston Association job. There are lots of ways for people to informally meet up with other tennis players, other garden plot renters. And I would not like to see us put additional staff time and expenses into us creating listservs. I don't think Reston Association needs to go down that path.
Director Juszczyk, would you like to respond back?
I don't have the resolution memorized, and so maybe Tony can help me, but we have a resolution that says members shall have the right to communicate with each other. And I have members all the time tell me, why does RA block us from doing that? Why can I not call RA and get that contact information for that person over there? Why, when I send a member rights request and say, can I have the email address for the president of the cluster so I can go invite myself to go to speak to them, do they deny that request? And so it's in our governing documents, and I'll happily find it. But we either need to take it out of the resolution, which I'm not even sure we're allowed to, because I think it's related to POA.
It's in POA. It says that the association has to provide a free method for members to communicate with each other. We do so by having a message board in member services. It meets the requirements of POA.
Thank you, Tony.
Pros and cons to providing other people's contact information.
Right.
That's,
That's more of a business decision. There are some privacy issues
Yes, that's
there. And I'll just leave it at that.
okay. Well, I would suggest maybe as a compromise in terms of closing this discussion, let's let staff look into that
Right.
and see
What are our
what
options?
are
That's
the,
all I'm
what options, what implications, any legalities, anything? Because I think if we don't know that, we can't really make a decision and come with an option. Director Farrell, I'm going to finish with you, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a thought on that for everybody
Yeah.
thinking this might be a good idea. Who moderates this list? If we were to go down that road.
Director Farrell, I think that's what I was trying to say, that
Well-
we need to know more how to,
Sorry to state the obvious.
yeah, but no, that's exactly what I mean. I think we need to learn more about what the issues are, what the options and so on, pros and cons and so on.
That's all I was asking.
Yeah, I think that's what
they're.
they're-
Serve out as
Yeah.
something, an example.
Yeah,
not
that's what I
as
understood, yeah.
The only.
That's what I understood Director Jashak's comment to be, yeah. But let's look into that. Get educated first. Thank you. Okay.
Maybe
I'm
just
gonna-
one quick thing on timing.
Yes.
So when you can expect our next conversation, probably sometime in June. You already have a fairly full early June
Yeah.
agenda with elections and now engineering contract discussions and that sort of
Sounds
thing. So maybe end of June. But what we would intend to do is take tonight's feedback, do whatever research is necessary, offer some opinions, and then fit it into the next stages of honing this down a little bit. I think I might just offer, however we kind of resolve this, how do we work on emails thing? One thing that we've talked about doing internally, and this is back to our organizational assessment, is how to be more proactive. And Kara's already talking how departments are speaking with each other. I'll just offer, talked with Laura Kowalski this afternoon. We're already starting to implement systems like somebody gets on the phone, hey, do we have your email address? Can we update your contact information? Like, we're trying to be proactive on this, regardless of whatever some legal advice may end up being.
Thank you. All right, Director Farrell, I'm putting my glasses on so I don't miss the agenda items here. All right, I believe we are ready for benefit-based fee permit concept. Laura, good to see you. How are you?
So I'm just going to go ahead and offer some opening thoughts here as we pull our presentation up. So one thing you probably don't all know about me is that I love fees. I live for fees. I've spent a significant portion of my life talking about fees. And when I said this to my staff in the first 2 weeks, they all looked at me the way you're looking at me now. But one of the reasons I am so passionate about this topic is we talked a little bit before about barriers to use and barriers to entry. And when you're running a transparent organization that's responsive to its members, you are constantly looking at fees. You're charging the membership for the services you're providing. So just a couple thoughts before Laura gets started. This has nothing to do with the assessment. So for everyone listening and everyone here, these are for fees that are not linked to the assessment. These are for different services that we provide. This thought came to me last fall. I was new in my tenure here, and I went down to Totally Trucks at CSF, for those of you that are familiar. And I went to Totally Trucks, and it's totally awesome. But Mike McNamara, that runs the team down there, said, hey, it's $3 a person to get in. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, well, it's a Friday. Our staff would be working. It's all of our equipment. We're really not incurring any costs here other than popcorn. So why are we charging people to come sit on a lawnmower? So just from my background and other things, it just didn't make any sense to me. So then we went through budget season and we had lots of conversations about fees, from garden plots to other items. And then towards the end of BGC, we had conversations about member records request fees, and it's $5 for USB and $2 for copies and all kinds of other things. So when you look across the board at the fees we charge through different departments, we're using different philosophies that I think are just sort of hangovers from old boards, different CEOs. We just haven't come up with a methodology that we can apply across the board. So in some previous work that I've done, this benefits-based fee model is something that I've implemented a few times. I call it a fee pyramid, although sometimes people think it's a pyramid scheme, so maybe we'll move away from calling it that. But if we could scroll to the first pyramid slide, that would be super helpful. One of the things that we're looking for tonight from the board is just a general endorsement or a motion, if warranted, on sending staff off to do some work to come back either in July and August with an updated fee resolution. Those that were around for budget time last year remember that I think the fee resolution was introduced for the first time maybe in November. It might have been October, but it was very late in the process. And I would very much like to get ahead of that, do lots of different work so we can come back and say, here's what we've done. Does it make sense to you as a board? So that as we go into budget season, fees are maybe not necessarily the biggest topic that we're talking about. So just some general information on how this works, and I'm sure everyone read and memorized the memo that we wrote, and then Laura can get into some specifics. So the bottom level of the pyramid is everything that's available to members through your assessment. In a non-planned community world, these are things that would be available to you through the taxes that you pay, like going to a playground or to a park. As you continue to move up the pyramid, the level of individual benefit increases, meaning the level of cost that we should be recovering increases. So as you move up the pyramid, one of the things we talk about in the level 2 is athletic field use. It is nearly impossible to quantify what it costs to run an athletic field. You can talk about mowing and staff and pesticides and all these other things, or you can think about the number of time it's available to people who are renting it for specific use and think about the number of times it's available to people generally to use. Look at some general benchmarking within the region, set a fee, come back and revisit it the following year. Then as you move up to levels 3 and 4, you're talking specifically more about programming and time spent at RA facilities using RA assets and RA staff to benefit less than 5 members, if not 1 individual member. So the easiest example that we can always use for individual benefit is swim lessons. So the way the pyramid functions and the feedback we'd like to get from the board is, okay, should we be recovering 100% plus revenue on individual swim lessons because our pools are being used to benefit 1 person? So that's a long-winded sort of intro to what this is, and I'm going to go to the next slide and have Laura talk a little bit about how this is currently functioning.
Okay, can you all hear me? Okay. So at present, in tip best practices with recreation management, we follow fee setting through a variety of different ways. So one of the first things is benchmarking against other localities and other jurisdictions. We consider cost recovery, how much our direct costs are, and what it would take to recover those. We look at our participation from the previous year and any trends throughout, and then also market factors like inflation and program demand. So though our department is using all of these steps to set our fees and then propose them on an annual basis to you all for consideration as part of the budget, and it has been effective, but as Pete mentioned, the previous board decisions and with the absence of a kind of a refreshed fee setting philosophy, it can lead to some issues. And it's an appropriate discussion right now related to the budget. Some of the issues or consequences of operating without one is that it can lead to inconsistencies with different methods being used to set fees throughout various departments. In addition, we want to make sure that it's really clear to the membership what's included in that bottom, what's in their assessment, the very base, so that they can see that value in their assessment and understand that it's such a great place to be. So,
We go to the next slide.
I think you go next.
I think we can skip this and just hit why explore the model. There we go.
So why explore the model? So why now? We've mentioned budget preparations have begun, and we really need a guiding North Star on how and why we set our fees. It's a good time to explore this, to apply it to the fee schedule that we're currently developing in advance of the first draft of the budget. Other reasons to explore consistency. So consistency in fee scheduling, fee setting, budgeting, and then also that explanation to members that I mentioned. So the approach for fee setting creates that consistency across the departments with member to non-member ratios. If there's a certain percentage, ensuring that those fees are consistent. In budgeting, to help understand how and why we set our fees and what's expected with revenue. And then also, we mentioned that, that making sure that you all can explain why we are setting the fees the way that they are. Staff can explain why. We're all on the same page, and ultimately the members understand. We can move to the next. So I wanted to mention scholarships and fees. So as you all know, we do provide youth scholarships in the categories that are listed on the slide, working with Friends of Reston to subsidize. This year's funding is $23,000 with them. Of note, this model, the whole model does not impact scholarships. That's an important effort that we would continue. Next. So next, we'll begin to review the fee structure as Pete mentioned, come back to you all in advance of the first draft. And I believe there's a proposed motion in your packet.
So just a couple follow-up thoughts, and then we'll turn it over for questions. One item that was not mentioned in the presentation is non-member fees for programs. We had extensive conversations about non-member fees last fall, for those who remember. And we are very cognizant that there was a motion made last fall that non-member pool passes will go up to the rate of the assessment for 2025. So we are very aware that non-member fees for all of our programs should be considered, and I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. I'm happy to take any questions, but what Laura and I are truly looking for is some feedback on the model, and if everyone feels comfortable with us coming back and making some adjustments based on the way the model functions and presenting it to the board in late summer.
Okay, thank you. Director Perry, and then Director Juszczyk.
I just am curious, and I think this is part of this, but I just want to be clear. When you are evaluating the programs and the offerings and all of that, you may, for example, switch where something falls. So if you mentioned the Totally Trucks, where it's now a paid, and you're considering making it part of just the assessment as something we offer to the membership. And you would be looking at that for all of our programs and offerings, is that correct?
That's correct, and we do understand that there could be corresponding revenue impacts that we'd be willing to discuss. We also did get some feedback from Chair of the Fiscal Committee, Dave Kerr, who reviewed this as the packet went out, and he's ready to discuss it as well.
And how about our new VP of Finance?
Ed doesn't have a choice, he's already reviewed it.
Excellent, okay. I appreciate that there may be other questions, but I would like to throw out the motion, if that's all right, and is that okay?
If you don't mind, let me get to Director Juszczyk first, and then I'll come back to you, Director Juszczyk.
Thank you very much for saying non-members, because that was number one on my list. My viewpoint right now, and I can definitely be convinced to change, is I think that non-member fees and the difference between what a member and a non-member pays is the area that we need to concentrate on. I love the pyramid, and I would certainly encourage staff to move forward with setting up some type of structure by which, or methodology by which, when we have new programs, you bring them to us and say, look, we went through this process and this is what we came out with. I'm very, very leery of changing member fees in general, to be honest, unless you're going to bring them down. If there are areas that I know that certain board members have, and I said, go for it, as a board member, advocate to change that fee up. But I would be leery to have our members experience a wholesale change on our fee structure. Mm-hmm. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they were set that way. And if we make big changes to them, especially changes where they're going up significantly, versus small incremental changes, or a plan by which we think that the target should be this and we're going to do a glide path of 5 years, or something that's doesn't create waves among the membership when it comes to fees. Because I think that where we really need to concentrate our efforts, especially this year, and what I heard from last year's board, is how do we address non-member fees? And how do we get them vastly different than member fees?
Thank you.
I think just to follow up on that, Director Dreschek, you're 100% right. And one of the points of this exercise is to identify where some of these discrepancies lie and be deliberate about, hey, for members and non-members on a certain kind of program, these fees are really, really close. And then identify if there are things that, from a member standpoint, some are way up at the top and some are way at the bottom. What do we want to do about that? That's as much part of the exercise as anything.
Thank you.
Director, Vice President Garwach.
Yeah, Mac kind of alluded to what I was hoping to. Seeing these in a grouping and having that, being able to tell the differences of what we are charging in a similar grouping for a similar benefit to our community would just be informative. It would be helpful, it would be informative. And it would also help, I think, our body when we do look at budgeting. And if we do decide to look at a particular fee, it would give us that additional education necessary to then educate the community as to why we are considering lowering or raising a particular fee when needed. So I appreciate that. How does timing go into this? So everything that I've heard to this point is all cost-based. The groupings seem to be focused primarily on price. Is there also an aspect of the pyramid that focuses on when we reevaluate fees and how that cycle would go?
Sure. So in most of our programs, they run on a cyclical basis. So Laura has a really great process where she reviews when the program ends, participation, what's the market doing, those kinds of things. So this would be an annual exercise. This is not a one-time and we're done sort of thing. And just a offhand comment, I would be a little more leery of most fees decreasing because of the benefit to the members instead of fees going the other direction. So I would see it more as a revenue discussion after we go through this exercise. I would not anticipate fees skyrocketing. Instead, I think it's more of an access conversation to programs.
Just one comment from my side, from me. Radical change will have negative impact.
Agreed. I agree with that.
And just to emphasize Director Joshak's point, if I understood this correctly, even if you're thinking about a glide path towards a goal, 5, 10 years, et cetera, be very much aware of that, because we have heard as board members in the community, when it comes to fees, people get very, very sensitive.
Absolutely.
And you know that, we all know that, so just be very mindful of that, that's all. Director Farrell.
So I would like to see a more extensive listing of which section of the pyramid,
yes,
or hierarchy maybe,
Sure.
another word we could
Sure.
use. What things fit into that segment. To reference an earlier conversation or allusion or pun, in my view, boat fees are in class 4. Others have a view that boat fees belong in class 1. That's a conversation that ought to be able to be undertaken civilly, as opposed to a discussion of entitlement, which is what I heard way too much of last fall. And so we ought to be able to have a conversation. I believe the number you gave us was the lakes were about $800,000 to operate.
Yes.
I think that's right.
Yes, that is right.
And a good hunk of that is the insurance policy.
Correct.
And other maintenance. And so there is a way of, we need to think about how we break that out. And I agree with the president that we shouldn't be looking at huge one-time changes.
Agreed.
But to be on a glide path that says those who benefit from this asset need to make a greater contribution toward that asset. Because I don't think a lot of people know this or understand it. We don't have to keep those lakes. And if the insurance gets to be too much, it may not be economically viable for us to keep the lakes. And if we lose one of the lakes through a catastrophic failure, rebuilding the dams may be something more than what we want to take on. So there's some issues here. I know that many people get all hot and sweaty over this issue, but I think it's an equity issue. So I'll be very interested to see which of those 4 classes the staff thinks that boat fees fall under and how they came to that recommendation.
Thank you. Director Perry.
I believe that this motion I'm going to make is a starting point in the conversation. Would that be accurate from a staff's point of view?
Sure.
Okay. So I think that starting the conversation is a good place to go. Okay? So I move to direct staff to conduct a comprehensive review of all fees within the association, including the difference between member and non-member fees, and to propose fees prior to budget draft number 1 in accordance with the benefits-based fee-setting model and philosophy as presented.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in, yes, Director Jeshczak.
Please do not send members our way this budget season. I cannot emphasize that enough. As soon as we start to, I don't want to derail the budget discussions because a random fee schedule came out and we end up with 100 members here thinking that we're going to drastically change their contributions to the association. I will happily support this, but it does make me nervous that we will derail what we really need to be talking about, which is the whole budget.
Yep. Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Okay. All those present, unanimous? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you all. That was great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are ready for the next item on the agenda, which is the capital improvement plan criteria, I believe.
All right, so while Chris is coming up, I'll give another short preamble. So many of you have heard me talk about criteria before, and I think the importance of any good process starts with some criteria-based setting. So there's been a lot of discussion here in the last 8 to 10 months about the CIP. We went through the budget process and we knew that the community survey had happened and we knew that the reserve study is happening now. And we know that there's going to be lots of data available to us that hasn't been available recently, and it's time to build a new CIP process. So as Chris and I were thinking about how we go about that process, I thought it would be really important, and if we can skip down a couple slides, next one, that's good. Chris and I thought it was important to think about what our strategy would be for looking at all of this data and bringing it back to the board in a way that they could look at the project listings for the next 5 years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the criteria and then turn it over to Chris to talk about what the process will look like. But there are many, many inputs to the new CIP. Those include the community survey, the reserve study, our new strategic plan, factors facing the environment, equity considerations, the recreation facility investment process, and zoning and site plan and permitting considerations. All of these items are items that we've heard from multiple board members about projects and how they're listed in the CIP and when we're asking members to invest and things of that nature. So as we continue to go down this path, we are hoping to talk to the board tonight and get some consensus similar to the last item on how we look at evaluating this criteria so that we can come back to the board with a plan that everyone believes they've had input in as we move forward. Before I turn it over to Chris, one other item I'd like to mention is that when we come back to the board for the first time with a sort of draft of the CIP or a straw man of the CIP, it is not likely to include investment as much as it's likely to look like, here are the items that we heard we should invest in based on all these criteria before we start to talk about the money piece. I was also very concerned as we started to do this work that we would show up in September with a new CIP that the board hadn't thought about and we hadn't brought that to them previously. So I'm hoping tonight that this is the first of many conversations about buy-in to the plan so that as we move through the budget process, we all agreed on the projects that we're investing in. So I'll turn it over to Chris now to talk about the process.
Sure. On the next slide, we kind of go out into the background detail of the CIP. You know, it's basically been used as an internal document the last few years since it was first developed because we've traditionally just operated on a biannual basis. A lot of our projects were only looked at in the next 1 or 2 years. And so a couple years ago, we started developing more of a CIP, which is traditionally used by a lot of municipalities, start forecasting further out and being more intentful as to what we're going to do. So this is what we're trying to do with this CIP by also adding a lot of these new inputs into it, which we've never had before. So it's kind of an exciting time to start looking at what we can start feeding into this thing and start getting a new output that we can actually be really able to use and bring a CIP to the forefront versus just sort of being an internal document. So, the CIP is to, maximize the useful life of our investments, planning our investments at the right time, being thoughtful of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and to then also look at how we're going to finance these things into the future. Are we going to pay-go with assessments? Are we looking at maybe doing, debt issuance? There's many different avenues that feed into this, but as Pete said, the first step is to sort of identify all the different inputs, how they feed into this, start coming up with a game plan of here are our priority projects, here's what we think they're going to cost after we determine that, and then how we're going to pay for it. So you can hop to the next slide. So this kind of develops a roadmap we have here that shows all the different inputs and the steps we have in the final presentation of a new CIP. So the community survey, looking into what do the members want to see. The reserve study, we haven't done one since 2019. So the 2024 is going to give us a great new benchmark to look at what's the current existing condition of all of our assets, what are some of the suggested scheduled replacements from an engineering perspective, and then maybe what are some of the future costs we're anticipating with those replacements. Beyond that, then we have the environmental factors. What can we do within the CIP to address the environmental concerns that we're facing? What are the new options we can look at evaluating? What are some projects we might want to strategize differently than we have before to then counter some of the environmental things we're seeing? Then the strategic plan is another major input into this where we can start seeing what are the strategies and the priorities of the organization, how do they fit into the CIP? Then beyond that, we also have the permitting and zoning considerations. These have come up. We've had a few projects that have suddenly gotten stalled because of this. So we're looking at more and more strategies to evaluate in advance, further advance, getting through the county, the steps you may or may not have to take because they constantly seem to change sometimes, and then baking that into the scheduling dynamic of the CIP. Then we also have the other input, which is the recreation facility investment process. That's the PRAC process, but it also includes community input as well. Giving enough time to get community input and feedback in scope development, meeting them out in the field, getting their insights into what we should be doing with the projects we have coming up. Then we take all those inputs and we bring them into kind of what we're proposing is an evaluative criteria process. This is actually something similar that a lot of agencies do where they have a lot of priorities coming at them. How do you then try to untangle what are your true priorities when everything's being thrown in the pot? Well, you start creating a strategy of then saying, okay, there's avenues you can grade them and rate them based upon specific criteria, and you get a weighted amount, and then that starts giving you sort of an outline of, okay, these are the highest numbered things, these should start first, and they need to therefore maybe be prioritized in the CIP and come first and have the high priority versus the other things which maybe they're still important, but perhaps maybe not as important, and they maybe get pushed further out in the CIP. So you hop to the next slide there. So this is a very draft sort of representation of what a criteria-based grading scale could look like, where we have our different items between the relevance community survey, priorities within the reserve study, so on and so forth, and then combating that with other items as well, such as does the project include trails, pools, and playgrounds, which are major elements that came about from the community survey as big priorities of the public, the membership, and then environmental factors, how is this funded within the correct year based upon zoning restrictions. So all these different elements have grades, point values assessed with it, and then it then basically outputs sort of your listing of what we should start focusing on. Next slide.
So I'm going to hop in, Chris, on this one only because I'm currently torturing the staff on all of our vehicle-related items. But we're currently going through a pretty comprehensive review of all of the vehicles that we have. We've heard in the past that we may have too many. I talked to Director Flashman today. He was happy to see that we're considering which vehicles can be candidates for EVs. So we do plan to come back in the fall with a pretty comprehensive review of the fleet in general, and if we think there's vehicles that are underused, undervalued, those types of items. So I didn't want to I didn't want Chris to talk about vehicles and think that he was torturing the staff because it's truly me that's doing that. But we do think this is good work and it's just time for a review.
So really with the next important steps of the process, we've already initiated the reserve study. We've been speaking with them. They're checked in with them today. They're still crunching a lot of data through at them. So we're starting to work on that. And then the next piece of this is to then start presenting that reserve study to the fiscal committee and the board in July, which then gives us the first big data input and then we start feeding everything else into that. We start building it up, slowly building the Lego blocks up. And then we start providing you the first look at the CIP in August. And then from that point, we start kind of touch base with you, see if we're heading in the right direction with some of these criteria-based evaluations, what the reserve study is telling us, and then we start issuing out the next revisions of the CIP as we go through the budget process, September through November.
Okay, thank you. Let me start off with a question or a comment from me. When you look at your development roadmap, I would suggest think about how that roadmap will tie back to the strategic plan as applicable. Because there's a strategic plan that's got an implementation aspect to it, and it's an overarching sort of plan going forward. And
Number 4 on the chart.
Yeah, make sure that at least you consider that as well. That's just a comment, not a question. And then on your evaluation criteria that you listed there, I would like to see more detail on that. I think there are additional criteria that I suggest you might want to think about. I don't want to give you a quick, a recipe book or anything, but there are other things that you should think about. Director Farrell and then Director Perry.
Sure, go ahead.
No, you raise your hand first.
Okay. I'm looking at page 5 of the materials you sent us, and I'm glad our CFO is here.
Can you give us a hint of what that might be on?
It's on page 5, it's the top bullet.
Of the memo, page 5 of the memo, correct.
Page 5 of the memo.
Oh,
Okay, top bullet. One of the things that isn't meant, it's not exactly laid out here, but one of the issues that we've talked about with, all the way back to St. Bob, about what I want to call generational equity. So last night, we were over at Barton Hills, and our director was asked, our construction person was asked, well, how long will this tennis court last if we do the work we're doing? And the answer was 40 years. But the people who live here now are paying for that 40 years. And there's a equity question. Should someone who's not going to be using that court for 40 years be expected to pay for that 40 years life of the court? And one of the ways you smooth that out so that the people who benefit from the facility pay for the facility. And one of the ways you do that is with borrowing of one kind or another. And that's why many municipalities, and that's, this goes back to when I was 20 years old and on the capital budget plan for my hometown, was, okay, it's not fair to say to the people who own the houses today, you're going to pay for an asset that somebody else is going to use 20 years from now. And they don't pay anything toward that asset or very little toward that asset. And so one of the ways you deal with generational equity is you borrow the money and you pay it back over the life of the asset. And that way, I'm not paying for 40 years worth of an asset, I'm paying for this year's use of an asset. And the homeowners who live here 10 years from now, which will be a different group of people than who live here today, will pay for that. Yes, there's an interest cost involved. I get that. But there's an equity of not asking the people who live here today to pay 100% of the cost of providing an asset for the community that exists here long after I'm dead. And there's that generational equity. And I'd like to see that involved in our CIP and have that conversation. If I may continue, happy to hear from our CEO. The other thing I'm confused by is if we're coming in with a CIP that is expected to have a board adoption, it strikes me that we're going to have projects listed on that CIP before we go through the PRAC process. And it feels kind of like cart and horse, and I don't have an answer as how to reconcile that, but I think we need to think about how that PRAC process and member input, which is part of the PrAC process, right? That's why we asked PrAC to do that, is to get, so the board isn't doing the input, PrAC's doing it, so it doesn't prevent the people from coming to the board later. But I'm concerned that we produce a capital improvement plan in, let me look at it, September? Yeah, September to November, that preempts or tells the membership that we've already made these decisions. And that's, and I don't know the answer.
So
but it's a real problem.
So just the thought that we've put into that, because I've been fearful of the same, we've been dinged, I think, a few times in the last few months for not referencing the recreation facilities investment process, which is a lot to say. What I've been envisioning is if any project is over 500,000, if it's not critical or mission critical to 2025, it moves to 2026 so that we can get that public input that's required of the process. So the reserve study will play a role in that as well. If we think something's falling apart, we may have to take a different approach to that. But the process considers lots of public feedback and PrAC feedback. So if we can move those projects to a minimum 26 to allow 25 for that to happen, that's been my initial thought to that same issue that you raised. I don't think it's a perfect answer, but it's a start to that question.
It also might be, Mr. President, with your permission, it also might be like, put an asterisk there.
Sure.
That says, hey, we still got to take this project through the PrAC process, and we will.
Sure.
Because I think that was one of the most legitimate criticisms of the Barton Hill experience, is that there was a budget commitment to do that and do the lights and do the pickleball before we ever went through a public input process. And that caused a lot of the resistance. Now, if we've gone through that process, would the outcome have been different? Who knows?
Sure.
But it generated a whole lot of antagonism that we committed to that that capital improvement before we went through the input process.
Sure.
And we need to avoid that.
Sure.
Thank you. Director Perry, you had your hand up.
Mr. Cummings wanted to respond.
Would you
can
allow me?
respond.
Please, thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to tie together a couple of different work plans as John was talking about debt issuance. So one of the things that we've been holding off on, patiently waiting for a new CFO, is to talk about the strategy of debt issuance and what that might look like. It's come up at the fiscal committee a couple of times and exists on our finance department work plan. I think Ed would nod. I probably talked about it the first day with him and what that might look like. I don't know whether it's going to tie into this year's CIP process because there's a lot of policy making that needs to go into that. But I want to amplify the point that John made. I don't know if I've ever used the term generational equity, but the concept of spreading the costs over time that align with the time period that you're using those facilities is a well-accepted concept. Depending on the length of the debt issuance, the debt service is less a relevant factor, and that's why a lot of cities will borrow money over a 30-year time horizon to pay off these sorts of projects. I think in any event, as you take on that concept and think about the policy making, education is a big part of this in this kind of community. The day I got here, I heard about Columbia and their debt issuance problems. And we're doing a lot of research around HOAs and how they have done those things. Nonetheless, our community has it in their head, Columbia is underwater because they issued debt. Fair, unfair, is it applicable to us? Yes, no. That's what the community thinks. I think we just need to talk through how that works. But those ideas are currently in multiple work plans, and we'll make sure they loop back for you.
Thank you. Director Perry?
I just want to make sure looking through this, in your explanation, you mentioned that currently we've been working kind of on a 1 to 2 year look into the future. And based on this, we're now looking 4 years in the future versus 5 years. Is that, is 4 years what we're looking into the future?
25 through 20, so 2025, 2029 is what we're going to do. So the 2025, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. I count 25 to 30 as being 5, so I apologize. And then I just, looking at the criteria-based approach draft, I think I heard maybe from Jalal, I want to make sure that we're really prioritizing needs, right? Like if a facility or an asset needs repair or something, that is given a high priority, not just
yes, we need to know how it affects the environment. We need to know all the other pieces, absolutely, no doubt about that. But we want to make sure that those needs are certainly prioritized. And then I think that's it. I think there were very valid points made, and I look forward to seeing the draft. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Santa.
Expanding on what Margaret said, is for board discussion or for staff to just take back, but perhaps you should maybe provide weighted percentages for each criteria. Maybe we do all think they're all equal, maybe they're not, maybe to us to give you guidance, but I suggest a path forward might be to accomplish what Margaret's saying.
Thank you. My comment relative to additional criteria, I didn't get into the details, but it included Director Santa's comment here. I think when you think about, you've done this, we've all done this, when you think about criteria, you don't just put a 5 or a 6, they're weighted. And furthermore, depending on how you approach your evaluation process, it's a combination of, as Director Perry said, which one is more important, depending on the project that you're looking at. Those will vary, and that was the intent for my comment in terms of saying, think about various aspects of the criteria and additional criteria, because once you show that process, then we understand it better. So thank you very much. Yes, Director Farrell. I'm sorry, Director Juszczyk.
I just want to first reaffirm my support for figuring out this wetland stream credit and looking forward to figuring out what we can use that for. Also wanted to clarify in the packet that we have a facility improvement matrix that was approved by the board, which is different than the one that was submitted by the Recreation Working Group. There were edits made to it, so I want to make sure we're using the right one, because I know you weren't here when all that went down. I don't think either one of you are here. I want to clarify this criteria-based approach. This is basically this happens before Chris would bring us a list of the items up for next year or the 5-year cycle.
That's right.
Okay, so what is interesting is I've never really seen the community or the board in my memory ever really question staff's evaluation of whether a facility needed to be updated. That piece, I feel like confidence all around. And so I don't want to necessarily send you guys down a rabbit hole of evaluating something that there's already a trusted path there. And I don't know if that's a completely public path. I think that maybe just over the years as it's been presented, there's pictures and there's an explanation. And so I feel like we see the path of selecting those assets that need to be redone. And then part of the facility improvement matrix, there was a page 2 to that, which actually speaks to Director Santa and Director Mapar's weighted averages. We actually have weighted averages and questions for the criteria, and so I'm thinking maybe you haven't seen that page of it that the recreational group came up with, and then the board added a couple questions to, and then we approved. And so I think you could use that because it's already an approved method as part of what you already bring us. But I want to make clear, unless there are objections from other board members, I think the trust is there as identifying the facilities that have to be replaced. I think where the breakdown usually comes is what you were speaking to as part of your presentation, is we identify them and then we put them in the budget, and then everyone feels like, well, we didn't have a discussion. What's that going to look like in the future? And that's the piece that it's almost like if you bring it this year and you put it in the budget for 2 years from now, then it gives you time to go through the facility matrix. Where love to see us get to is how are we combining the review, the facility matrix with the key decision points? I think that's where we've been getting crossed, and maybe we need to take the facility matrix and combine it with, Chris, your key decision points and say, okay, during the process, this is what's going, the key decision point number 1 is going to be made at this stage on the facility matrix. And that will bring us together so that we're not crossing. And I'm thinking, well, Chris went to DRB and I thought we had to do KDP 2 before we went to, like, that's where I feel like we need the clarification between the board and the staff, and then between the community and all of us is the beginning part of deciding, okay, it was identified. Now we get to all have fun, right? Crack gets to make some recommendations. Community gets, in the knowledge that we're even trying to do it, and they get their say. So I like what you put together, but I feel like maybe you already have the criteria page and the trust.
Yep.
So I don't want to say I'm not supporting it, but I don't know that it's needed.
Thank you. Director Santa.
Bob said something in the chat. Is there any way someone can read it or he can unmute himself?
Sean, number 2. Are we able to see that?
Bob said something about financing, I think.
Financing is a viable alternative as long as the board and membership understand that the cost of any capital project will increase by the financing costs. Unlike a member's investment in a home that has historically increased in value over the holding period, that is not the case with RA. The capital asset will need to be replaced. For example, a $1 million amortizing loan at a fixed rate of 6% for 15 years will cost RA over $508,000 in interest costs. It only works if everyone understands all of the facts before incurring the debt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Farrell?
Mr. President, I move that the board direct the staff. I'm sorry? Thank you. Thank you. I move that the board direct the staff to incorporate the comments that were made tonight by the board into a revised capital improvement plan criteria, and to present an improved version at the June 13th meeting. Is that possible?
Go one more.
Next one.
The one?
Next one.
Okay, so what's that date? June?
27th.
27th? Yeah. Okay, we're at the June 27th meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Second discussion?
Just on that point, just to be clear so that there's no misunderstanding, we have a videotape so you can review the comments that were made. Any of the comments that were made about this plan are problematical for you to incorporate them into the new? Were there any comments made?
No, I feel just like the last topic, I really appreciate the feedback. This is really helpful for us as we move forward, so thank you all.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Any discussion? Any discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to add one piece for their,
Go ahead.
on your map of the different pieces, maybe that needs to look different, and I recognize that seems very superficial, but everything was like arrows pointing like this is step 1, this is step 2, and I don't think it really flows that way. I think they're more of a, kind of in combination at the same time. And again, I recognize it seems to be superficial, but I think that might help some recognizing that it's not we go from this arrow to this arrow to this arrow versus we're really considering all of these at the same time.
We understand, we may be trying
It's pretty, though.
to be creative and
No,
maybe,
it's
maybe fit.
right. Yeah, no, but I just in addition to.
We get it. That's
Okay.
helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So back to Director Farrell's motion. Any more discussion on that? Those in favor? Okay, we have a unanimous vote here, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. I believe,
Mr. President, I move to convene an executive session to consult with legal counsel and to discuss contractual and personal matters.
I'd like to amend the motion.
sorry, I didn't hear. Go ahead. But we have, don't we need to get a second on that first?
Contractual and
Oh,
personal
okay.
matters. Those are the only few things we can talk about.
No, I got that. Move to convene to executive session to consult with legal counsel to discuss contractual and personnel matters and limit debate to 1 hour so that we can end on time since we're already past schedule.
I would not agree to that amendment.
Is there a second?
Is there a second for the amendment?
Yeah. I second that.
Let's do the vote.
First vote on the amendment after, unless you wish to speak to it.
I don't. Do I need to pass the gavel to him?
You should.
Counsel.
Okay, all in favor
No,
of the amendment?
He wants to speak to the motion.
No, I said I don't want
He
to speak to the
doesn't
motion.
want to
Oh, then
Oh, we thought
you
you
don't,
said
I thought
yes.
you did want to
No.
speak to the motion.
No.
Then go
So
ahead.
then you don't have to pass it. No.
Okay. All those in favor
Of the amendment.
of the amendment? 1, 2, 3. Those opposed? Okay, the motion does not carry. Fails. Back to the motion, original motion. Back to the original motion. Any more discussion? None.
I'd like,
we have a
I'd like to amend to remove contractual matters.
Second.
Hang on a minute, I think he's got one.
I just
You
have
do?
one point of clarification for the board. I want to talk about contractual.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I
sorry,
did
this
not
is
know
just something I
that.
want to make sure I'm clear on.
Then
Okay.
I'm good with it.
You're going to withdraw your motion, your amendment?
Yeah, withdrawing.
Okay, so back to the original motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Mr. President, matter of personal privilege, can we take a 5-minute Board of Directors certified to the best of each member's knowledge that only those matters appropriate for executive session of a contractual nature involving personnel matters or involving consultation with counsel were discussed or considered by the board during the executive session.
Is there a second?
Recording in progress.
One more time, John.
You got it.
Second.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. All right. Director Juszczyk.
Just want to address a motion that was made last meeting, and we deferred it for a date certain of this meeting. And for the record, Director Johnson, seconded by Secretary Santa, moved that the RA Board of Directors direct staff to conduct a planning activity with the end goal of engaging those communities that are not currently RA members. This planning should include, but not be limited to, the feasibility and the ROI analysis of developing and implementing this plan, identifying and documenting communication channels through print and social media, initiate direct correspondence and scheduling meetings with developers and their attorneys, and engaging directly with residents of non-member communities. RA staff will be required to submit monthly progress reports to the board. The complete planning of these activities will be finalized by June 30th, 2024, and should include an actionable implementation plan. We deferred it, and I move that we defer it to the May 23rd, 2024 board meeting.
Second. Oh, then move it to June.
You want to move it to June?
Yeah.
Okay, move it to June 13th. I think that's the June meeting date, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Director Farrell.
regarding the next item of business, which is the draft agenda, I'm going to move that we adopt the draft agenda with a couple of changes. Tonight, one of the innovations that I continually praise my predecessor for, Mike. Thank you. I'm going to move the agenda for the next meeting. One of the innovations that I regularly praise my predecessor for was to change the way that presentations are made to the board by the staff. Tonight, I put a stopwatch on the staff presentations, and they totaled, all of them together, totaled an hour. The prior practice had been that staff presentations would be videotaped so that we could look at them over the weekend prior to the meeting rather than going through them here at these meetings. So with regard to the agenda, we have one in the binder, and I'm going to move that we adopt the agenda for the May 23rd meeting with the following. I'd like to see the CEO update as a video, and to see the land use and comprehensive plan update as a video prepared by either Director Juszczyk or Chairman Himmel, and have those available to the board on the Friday before the, with the Friday package. I need a second.
Is there a second?
You can give it to Michelle.
Why is she giving us a video?
Yeah.
Because she's the chairman of the land use committee.
Do we have other chairmen give us videos?
Finance committee does it all the time, treasurer does it all the time.
Okay.
The treasurer does it.
So the motion has been seconded. Discussion. Mr. CEO, Matt.
Just as a point of clarification, I don't recall, just from the CEO update, since I was specifically part of the motion, I don't recall giving a presentation really. There's always a lot of questions that come through. So, I mean, is the board looking for more of a visual presentation on the data that I'm providing in the packet?
Director Farrell can, yeah.
So practice was that we had a video. We could look at the video over the weekend prior to coming to the meeting. And if you recall, I would then ask the board, are there questions regarding the presentation? And then people would ask questions about the presentation. And the object here is to reduce the length of the meeting and to avoid having to sit here while somebody reads us a PowerPoint presentation. I mean, we don't need that. We can watch a video and we can review stuff prior to the meeting and not have all 8 of us for an hour sitting here waiting for, have somebody reads us a PowerPoint
So
presentation.
Director Farrell, a question for you. Based on past board meetings, the CEO update has, on the average, has been mostly just verbal status on certain topics. Are you, do you want to include the CEO update as a video, or are you mostly interested in some of the other long ones that include PowerPoint slides and have a tendency to read the slides and so
Prior
on?
to Mr. Cummins being with us,
Yeah.
Mr. Butler did the CEO update as a video.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the practice, and it shortens the meeting. I mean, we lost an hour tonight listening to stuff that, in large measure, we could have and did read ahead of time. And I don't need to be, had it, if I read it, I don't need
Yeah.
it to have it read to
Just
me.
another clarification, even today, the CEO update was not PowerPoint slides or presentation, and it was rather short, and majority of the time during the CEO update was Q&A.
I did not count that toward the hour.
I understand. I'm just offering that whether we want to maybe just be a little bit judicious about how we lump things together. Do we want to, any other discussion? Director Juszczyk.
I think the other value of the videos is that we showed them during executive session so that members had access to them, and that we had videos that staff could take snippets of and put in RA News or put out in other avenues so that the members that are probably even less likely to read a board packet could benefit from the information. So for like your question to the CEO update, verbally saying what's in that report, I think has some value outside of even the board meeting. But there's also some value in, some board members are going to be more apt to look at a video than they are to look at both, like I do. But I think there's more value even outside of the motion. But in general, I would support, as many of videos that we can, so we can come and actually have the dialogue is the point.
Director Perry.
I would like to consider an amendment to that motion, which would be that for future informational pieces of any agenda, that it be a video that can be utilized in advance with the recognition that we will have questions, and we may ask questions where they need to repeat something in the video. But instead of pointing it just to this one and this one for next meeting, maybe consider just saying, if it is listed as informational, it gets a video.
I'm happy to restate the motion along those lines.
Okay.
But
That's a
we're-
substitute that I'll second.
If I can, then what we do is adopt the motion that you suggested. And did you second it?
I did.
She
Yeah,
did.
wonderful. So we could adopt that first and then adopt the agenda. So I'm happy to withdraw my motion with
Thank you.
unanimous consent
Is
of
there-
the
yeah,
body.
thank you.
Unless there's an objection.
It's-
And we
yep.
can take up Director Perry's motion.
So no objections. We go with Director Perry.
Just not an objection, but just an indulgence for the board. As you're adding new items.
Mike,
Oh, you can take the
let
vote.
us do the
Okay.
motion first. All right, so the motion is withdrawn unanimously. We're back to your motion, Director Perry.
You want me to repeat it?
Just so that-
I'm not eloquent.
It's already been seconded.
It's
We're
been
in
seconded.
discussion.
No, that was just a point of reference.
I think the only thing that I would state is I think we all need to acknowledge that there may be times, and I think this may be what Mac was trying to get to, is as things come up last minute, they may not be in the
Yes,
video.
absolutely.
And therefore, he may
Understood.
need to
Yeah.
report on them in the
Absolutely.
moment.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. Okay. Did you have a comment?
It was pretty close to that. I think as you're all thinking about things that need to come on the very next meeting's agenda, which causes the timing crunch. You know,
Yeah.
part of the idea is to vet those things anyways, just from a timing standpoint, and so they really should happen like a month, like 2 meetings later, not the very next meeting. We barely got this packet out because of the things that we were trying to scramble to get the written materials together. Just as an example, tonight, we could not have produced videos because we only had 6 days to get all the materials ready. So, having said that, I understand the concept totally, and so we'll start working on that.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Vice President, you're a nay. Okay, so we've got Director Perry.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6.
6, 1.
2, 4, 5, 6, 1, the motion carries.
Okay, then I'll move to adopt the agenda as it appears in our binder.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
There's a second. Discussion. Guess what? Director Perry, you have a comment? No, I just. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Director Dodd, did I see your hand? Yes, thank you, thank you. Motion carries.
No further business.
No further business before us. Let me conclude by saying that myself and hopefully representing the board, I thank you for all the work that you guys do, including yourselves and staff, and please relay the message to the staff that we appreciate the work that they do. Okay? Thank you very much and have a good night.